Investor Day, right? Master Plan Part 3 is being unveiled. He had mentioned that in a tweet, right? And this has been a long time coming, right? Master Plan Part 3. I
Hmm.
think it was previewed almost a year ago or last
Yeah.
summer, and we hadn't heard anything about it for a while. And so we'll finally see that and whatever it entails and maybe more on Investor Day tomorrow. So, what are your thoughts of Master Plan Part 3? Is it going to involve mega packs, solar farms, solar roofs, or not really so much that, more on like mining and getting lithium supply up to speed? And what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, so I get the sense from, looking at all the different, breadcrumbs that they've left, Elon talking about this being for like the broadest definition of shareholders, basically meaning the whole planet. And, he talks about how this is going to be like how we as a society can, I forget exactly what he said, but it seems like he's using very broad kind of terms of how can we get to, sustainability as a species, and the fact that he's talking about how this intersects with boring and rocket lab, or not rocket lab, SpaceX, and
Hmm.
um, some of his other companies. To me, I'm probably expecting less, detailed individual product updates and more, kind of high arcing strategy, and how are we going to get the material, like what's the goal? Okay, get to 20 terawatt hours of battery production
Yeah.
by as a society, not Tesla's goal, as
Yeah.
a society by
Okay.
2030 or whatever. And so to do that, we need, like just the napkin math of how many, tons of lithium and everything else. So I think it's going to be a lot more high level. I think there will obviously be some, product. Gen 3 is very clearly going to be talked about there. But I think it's going to be more like this is the type of engineering that we're going to be doing, kind of similar to what they did with Battery Day, where they talked about how they're going to reduce, capex per unit of capacity, and reduce the manufacturing footprint, and increase the efficiency,
Hmm.
increase the range of the vehicles. Like I think it's going to be kind of high level like that, rather than
Mm.
entirely product specific.
Yeah.
But I'm just very excited. How are you thinking about it? What are your expectations going into tomorrow?
I think so too. I think there'll be some product announcement unveiling as well. Um, but I think for the Master Plan Part 3, I think they're going to go over how they're going to achieve the scale of manufacturing with new gigafactories. Mexico will probably be announced officially
Yeah,
tomorrow, I would imagine.
I agree.
Maybe Indonesia too, or something, or some other factory. I'm not sure, but I could see two factories being announced, which would be cool. Um, the mining, maybe Tesla's gonna stay, affirm, announce some new partnerships for mining tomorrow that hasn't been reported yet in the news. I know in the last few weeks there's been a few, agreements for materials or mining with various rumors even. So maybe they'll make it more official tomorrow with some of those announcements. Um, there was some clue that like the Boring Company and SpaceX would be included in the Master Plan Part 3. We're trying to figure out how that's possible, but maybe the Boring Company has something to do with mining. It's going to help with some. Maybe Tesla's going to do its own mining if they need to, or they'll say that. Or I'm not sure on that front. But maybe they also are going to talk about not just lithium, but this sodium batteries, right? The sodium ion, is that
Sodium
so
ion phosphate or
sodium,
something like
something
that, I
like that,
think.
yeah. So that doesn't need lithium, right? So
Hmm.
I've seen more and more talk of this, and I think there's some Chinese company. I'm not sure if it's CATL, some other company that's like
I think it
really,
is CATL. Yeah,
yeah,
they're
CATL. They're
trying to
really
do it this year.
ramp it up. Yeah, they're trying to ramp it up fast. And China, if anyone can do it, a Chinese company can ramp it up. We've seen what China can do and Chinese companies can do. So that would be exciting for Tesla to say, like, yeah, we have our Baskin Robbins assortment of battery chemistries, and we're going to be adding sodium ion for, our new product, or whatever, so that would be cool. I think just to have more supply potential versus just with lithium constraints right now, or how fast that can be ramped up. So I think that would be helpful. But I think from a product unveiling perspective, and they'll present their vision of where they need to get to, like you said, with certain metrics of, how many kilowatt hours and such they have to get to for batteries by 2030 or whatever. They'll reaffirm those metrics, I think. But what I'm most excited about is sort of the product announcements and the product, and I think it's going to be two things. This is what I think. I think it's going to be the Model 3. this Highland project. Maybe that's what they call internally at Tesla, but I think that's basically a refresh of the Model 3, where they're going to refresh the entire manufacturing process for it, so that
Mhm.
instead of costing, what is it like? What do we estimate? 30,000 or 30 or
I
35,000 to
think it was
build the
like
Model 3?
32. Kind of depends on which
Yeah.
site you're talking about, but
32.
yeah.
Yeah, let's say 32. So maybe they show like, oh, now we think we can build it for $20,000 once we're ramped up on this new manufacturing process. Maybe initially it's going to be 25,000, but as they ramp it up, it'll be 20,000, and we will sell it for 25,000. The Model 3, it'll be better than the current Model 3. The specs will be the same, but it'll have like newer technology of some sort, maybe. So that's my guess, is that the Model 3 is just going to be the lower cost car,
Really?
and
That's
that's my guess.
okay. That's
Yeah.
I'm not in that camp at all. So that's kind of interesting. You think that
Yeah.
they could lower it down to, 25,000 just with
Eventually, it'll
the
be like 30,000 maybe initially, or 30 or 35,000. The newer ones, it'll have like all 46A single die cast or something very innovative with how it's manufactured. More innovative than what's going on with the Model Y, because Tesla's always
yeah.
iterating to do something better, right? So it'll be, I mean, think about it. If they don't do that, the current Model 3 is already cannibalized so much by the Model Y. And if they don't do that and they have some other compact, then the Model 3 currently is obsolete, basically. Like who wants to
Yeah.
pay $40,000 for a Model 3 when they get a 25,000 compact car that's probably just as cool, as slightly smaller? So I think that's what they do, is they're iterating the Model 3 to be like the big thing. And then I think on top of that, you'll have the Gen 3 platform. It's kind of confused, Model 3, Gen 3. Gen 3 is like the next iteration of vehicle. So I think the next iteration of vehicle will be the Robo taxi. And I think that's going to be separate from the Model 3 or the Model Y or any conventional car. It's going to be a completely different design. And it might even cost more to make. Maybe it's like a $40,000 or $50,000 cost of goods build, because it'll be like a minivan type futuristic thing that has all this cool stuff to be able to do. And it'll be bigger and much more range, maybe even, and better specs and all that. But because even though it's costs more to build, the return on capital for such a robo car is so great that it's de minimis, whether it costs 25,000 or $50,000 to build, because this thing's running 80% of the time or 90% of the time, delivering goods, shipping people or things back and forth, and maybe carrying even the AI bot around to do different special jobs here and there. But it's just making money, 23 hours a day, 1 hour a day charging or something like that. So it's going to just have such an immense return on capital. It doesn't really matter that it's fine that it costs 50,000 or 40,000 building. It's going to be super cool. And so that's my guess, is what this next Gen 3 platform is, just like a new type of vehicle completely that we're going to be surprised with. They'll show it, the prototype. It won't be produced in like until 2025, let's say, maybe, but they're going to unveil it and what the purpose of it is, I think. So that's my guess on the Gen 2 platform. That's kind of, I mean, I haven't seen too many people talk about it like that, but that's my thought. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I could
It's too
certainly see that being
crazy.
the case. Well, no, I don't think it is too crazy. I mean, we know robotaxi is going to be the, like the probably the platform or the vehicle to end all vehicles, right? I mean, that's going to change the whole like notion of car ownership and everything like that. So,
Hmm.
yeah, to me, it seems reasonable that that's there is some change there. I like I've heard all sorts of different theories. Like there's the connecting the dots was I had this like pi then tau, version or like theory because Elon's been tweeting those types of things out. So I don't know. In my mind, I'm undecided on whether I think they're going to go with like some, let's say, a 25 or $30,000 car, and then the robo taxi. Yeah, I'm not sure if it makes sense to do both or what Tesla's thinking, because I think if they do like a $25,000 car, um, and then the robo taxi comes after that, like doesn't the robo taxi just like 2 years later Osborne that cheaper
Well, the robo
version?
taxi, I think, is not going to be consumer owned. I think it'll be
Yeah,
consumer
right.
used. But I think the $25,000 Model 3 is what I think it'll be. Just a much less expensive Model 3 that's kind of cool or refreshed and such. I think people will still want to own that and drive that and have possession of it anytime they want, without having to call on a Tesla app to pull, the robo
Hmm.
car up for them. It's just like Uber, or so I think the robo taxi is going to be more a fleet thing for Tesla initially, and maybe maybe certain businesses or fleet operators can get it, and maybe individuals can get it, but it'll just be like sold for $100,000 or $80,000. I don't know. It'll be ridiculous, not much more expensive, and maybe it'll be licensed. I don't know, but it'll be more of a service vehicle, like
Yeah.
a robotaxi as a service versus ownership. That's my thought.
That's where it just gets so crazy. I mean, you would imagine it would probably cost something comparable to build. So maybe $20,000, $25,000, something like that. And then,
Yeah,
but they can sell it for like 75,000 or or
yeah,
something like that, like with the
yeah.
software integrate. It's just like if they can actually figure that out. I mean, watch out, stock market, because that's just going to absolutely explode. But
And if
it's
that
I think
happens, though, do you think the market even believes them tomorrow? Like
no,
Thursday? I don't think so. The
no,
stock
no, they
tank.
don't.
If this happens, the stock tanks 10 or 20%. Even though it's long term conviction over Thursday and Friday. The only way the stock
Yeah.
goes up on Thursday and Friday, I think, is if they announce like the compact Gen 3 $25,000 car, and we're delivering it, we're taking orders now and we deliver it next month or next quarter or something, like the first ones, or if it's well ahead of schedule, if it's going to be delivered soon, and they think they're going to have a 20% profit margin. If they talk Wall Street numbers, it's kind of boring, just like a lower price, smaller car, but it's just like huge volumes and Wall Street can model it in their spreadsheets, then I think the stock goes up. But without that, I'm not sure the stock goes up. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think like if they announced a buyback or something like that, I think that would certainly help too. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, I agree with you. I think they're unlikely to do that. I think they're going to talk in much broader terms, and so we'll probably get super excited and nerded out about all this stuff. But I think there's also reasons for legitimate skepticism around some of this stuff, just because you know certainly if I go back to myself in 2018 listening to AI Day, I would have thought that we were at or very near robo taxis by the time early 2023 came around 5 years later. And
Yeah.
like from where we're standing right now, like the rate of improvement has but not been nearly as kind of exponential as I would have thought. So I think that rate is going to increase, but it's hard right now, I think, to say, all right, even if they announce the robo taxi, when will we as bulls get confident that like they've actually solved this problem? And then maybe 6 months after that, the rest of like Wall Street will agree.
Yeah. 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 So, and I think the Tesla bot is going to be a much bigger part of tomorrow than people. I think it could play a big role tomorrow. I mean, the Tesla bot is very important to Tesla's future, according to Elon Musk. It's going to be bigger than the car, right? So
Hmm.
it has to be a big part of Master Plan Part 3, I would think. Is there going to be a Master Plan Part 4 that it's part of? If not, then Master Plan Part 3 is where the bot plays a big role too. So um the bot will be a major part of tomorrow's presentation. I think
Hmm.
I feel like not enough people give enough attention to the bot. If it's going to be, if Elon says it's going to be bigger than the car, it's going to be bigger than the car eventually. Like he's made that kind of, just like he knows full self-driving is going to drive more revenue eventually than selling cars. If, we sort of believe that now. We can see that, but it's still not here yet. But the bot is like 2 levels away. It's harder to see
Yeah.
around that corner and see that. But Elon clearly sees, farther ahead than anyone else on this stuff pretty clearly. So
Do
I
you
think he'll.
so at the last AI day, they said they were like a month or a couple of weeks away, I think, from having the bot walk, the newer
Mm,
version. Do you think
that's right.
they bring that back out and say, hey, look how much progress we've made, and
I
it
think
can
it's
walk a
very
little bit more
likely.
naturally?
Yeah, maybe
That's
they have a
that'd
few
be
bots
interesting.
walking around doing something, serving drinks to people at the investor day. I don't know. It could be something cool. That would be amazing, right? That'd be cool to
That
have it functional
I
doing
I would
things.
lose my mind if they actually had it out there mingling with people. To me, it's like not even close to that yet, but
Eventually that'll be, maybe in a year
eventually it will.
even,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe.
Yeah,
But
and
right now
that's
it's not gonna
but
be
I agree
mingling
with you.
like, yeah, like maybe it'll be
And
more
to
of
me,
a design thing. Like he'll be on stage, he'll be like, I'm kind of thirsty, and then it'll like bring out a water bottle for him and walk away
yeah,
or something.
something like that that's actually practical would be really, really cool and very
Yeah.
inspiring on the rate of confidence that they've got.
But
Um,
like Martin Muldoon says, the comment, the bot will certainly tank the stock. Yeah,
it's so
if he
true.
makes the
It's so
bot the
true.
presentation, we all know it's a big deal, but the stock market will tank because the Wall Street analysts will be like, "What the heck? I don't know what to do with
Yeah.
this," and then the stock will tank. Anyway, what were you saying?
But I do think, and I hadn't really thought about this until you just made that comment, Emmett. But like if you're really taking the big kind of societal level look at like how do we get to the good future, I think the bot has to be a part of that. I mean, because there's conversations about the human rights situation with
Yeah.
mining cobalt, right? So like
Yeah.
the bot can help do those most dangerous, most like nasty jobs that we need to do in order to kind of accelerate the advent of sustainable energy, let alone like Mars exploration. Like I'm sure I would be shocked if the first Starship trip to Mars doesn't have a couple bots on it just to
It's
like
gonna have a lot of
try out
bots.
doing
Yeah.
something.
Might be
Yeah,
all bots even. Yeah.
I would think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they can do some work and they don't mind the radiation, and
Yeah.
they could work. Hopefully, if everything goes well, they could work for like 2 years up until like just getting stuff ready for humans up until the next
Yeah.
Earth Mars, what is it called, injection orbit or whatever it's called. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, to me, the bot is absolutely critical to the future of the entire like goal that Elon has in mind. But it's Martin's absolutely right. Like nobody's gonna like nobody aside from probably this like Tesla Twitter community really gets that or believes that that's true.
Yeah, yeah. And he mentioned SpaceX is going to be part of Master Plan Part 3 too. Maybe it has to do with Starlink. Maybe not really SpaceX. Maybe Starlink. That service will be integral into all the future vehicles. The Cybertruck especially strikes me as a dystopian car that has to have its own Starlink connection. Each one, I would think. So
Hmm.
yeah, we'll see tomorrow. I mean, the Cybertruck will be a big part. I think the Cybertruck production line they'll show off. It sounds like they have a whole bunch of Cybertruck uh, prototypes they can show off and let people drive around in or test out or something. So, one thing we touched on in our prep call yesterday a little bit was the like by Elon about the tweet of Buffett's share buyback comments,
Yep.
right? So that could be interpreted as like, well, Elon in principle, I think likes it from his investing, whatever part of his brain he dedicates to finance and investing, which is probably small compared to engineering and the future of humanity, obviously. But he's been right on like macro market financial stuff lately. So he could be just liking it because of that, or he could be liking it because it's sort of a signal to like Tesla's plans to announce something tomorrow. Maybe. What do you think, man?
Yeah, well, I mean, I forget when it was, maybe the Q3 call, sometime in the fall last year, I think, when this buyback talk was really running rampant. He said, in principle, he kind of supported the idea of a buyback, and I thought he even said something to the
We'll
magnitude of ten
probably
billion
do it or
dollars.
something. Yeah, I thought he
Yeah,
said that
like
too. We'll
so.
probably do 10 billion at least or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, they said in the invite that they're going to talk about capital allocation, and I think we are all in agreement that like the first priority is the actual R&D and like the building out the plants and like ensuring that they've got enough cash to weather any sort of macro storm. But once you've got that, if you still got $15 billion left over and you're generating, cash flow on an ongoing basis, why not do a buyback? And so that's what I think Elon kind of thinks, and I think it's more likely than not that they will announce a buyback of some sort tomorrow, or at least an authorization to say, yeah, we're authorizing the company to do a buyback. There's no plan for exactly when we'll do it, but when we think that the market conditions are right, we have the authority to buy in the open market. I think
What are
they'll
your
do something
odds of
like that.
that? What do you think? Like 50%, 70%? You said more likely than not.
I
So what do you
I
think?
think I would say 65%. To me, it
That's
seems.
pretty sure.
Well,
I
it's
would say
it's
I'm more
it's
at
a little
like
bit better than a coin flip, but it's
yeah,
not,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like
I'm at
80%.
I'm at 40%. I mean, I think it's
40?
very
Okay.
significantly possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but I think I would not surprise me if it happened, but I don't know if it's likely. That's like I could get there. I could get there with another signal, another liked tweet by Elon or something. But right now, I feel like I'm at 40%. Before that liked tweet, before we talked about that, I was at like 20%. I'd be like 10 or 20%. So that definitely increased my likelihood of it happening. But we'll see. Yeah, tomorrow. I hope they do because I think the stock would like that as well, short term. So that'd be interesting. Farzad, hey, how you doing? Farzad's in the comments. He says 80% they will, in his opinion. So he's much stronger on that.
Yeah.
You know,
He also says he likes you too much, and I wonder what that means. Like, he likes you, but to an inappropriate degree, I think is what he's saying.
yeah, yeah. So the other big thing the stock reacted to yesterday, and not just hype for Investor Day, coming up, but I think also the Giga Berlin report of the 4,000 cars a week
Yeah.
run rate they're at now. Now, does that report say they're at 4,000 a week going forward, like every week consistently, or is it one of those things like, yeah, we're at 4,000 a week for this hour of this day? We were at that rate, but we
No,
probably
it
can't
was
do it for multiple hours in a row. It's like it's hard. Sometimes it's confusing. Sometimes they give a report and it's like, yeah, we're at this rate, but it was just for like one like turbocharged hour or one turbocharged
yeah.
like shift, and then that's not anything close to being consistent, though. Did you dive into it much? Do you see? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think during the Model 3 ramp in 2017, especially, that's when we got a lot of the burst rate, like, oh, we did X number of Model 3s in 1 hour, or we proved
Yeah,
that we could hit a rate of 5,000 a week.
yeah,
But this tweet, the way that it was worded from Tesla Europe,
yeah.
it said that we hit 4,000 vehicles in the last week. So that's clearly maybe it
More
was something
official.
of a burst week or something like that. But I think they were at 2000. They noted that they did 2000. I want to say it was back in October, something like that. Um,
Yeah,
so to me, it seems indicative that they're just kind of on the steady ramp up that S curve. Maybe they dip down to 3,900 next week, but to me, it's not. It's not like this won't be sustained,
yeah,
at this level for another 2 months or something like that. I think they're pretty much there already. And the goal was, I think, to get to, I think it was 10,000 a week by the end of this year.
hmm
So to me, it's very good indication that they're well on their way to achieving that goal. I mean, they doubled in the last 6 months, let's call it ish. So if they
yeah,
double again, then they'll be almost to the goal, 6 months from now. And so to me, it's all tracking to exactly what they said they were trying to do.
yeah. I'm sure everyone on this channel follows Rob Maurer's Tesla Daily. If you don't, it's must watch every day. But he did a great analysis of this yesterday on his channel, showing the timeline between 1,000 for the week, then 2,000 for the week. It's sort of slowly accelerating. And I guess if it continues to slowly accelerate in the same degree, it would be like Q3 or something next,
Mhm.
where they might have close to 10,000 a week or something like that. He
Yeah.
says, but it, he did a good analysis on that on his channel. So that's great news, and I think that's part of the reason the stock popped 5 or 6% yesterday. Today, hey, we're pretty much flat. I don't know. We started the day up, and then when we were starting our show, we were down a few bucks, but now we're sort of flat. So yeah, we'll see how the day ends. The Nasdaq is close to flat, up a 0.5%, sort of de minimis. Anything up or down less than 1% these days feels like noise almost with how volatile the market is. But Tesla, flat. That's not bad. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So while we're talking about production onto Berlin, one thing we didn't talk about yesterday because the data wasn't out was the weekly insurance figures out of China.
China, yeah,
So they did I think it was 10,700 in the past week. And so if you're looking at what they've done year to date, it's like roughly half the level where they were the past quarter or so. So it's certainly not encouraging news out of China. There was this shutdown, and so you could say, all right, maybe there's not, there's the Chinese New Year holiday, and so that disrupts things. I think that's true to an extent, but they also had inventory, and to me, that we've had enough weeks of data now where even despite the steep price cuts, it doesn't seem that demand is like robust or even like good in China, I would say. So is
yeah.
that something that concerns you, or how are you thinking about the local Chinese market right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think they shut down the Model 3 line recently. I think there's clearly a demand issue for the Model 3 at the current value proposition of the current Model 3 in China. There's just a lot of good competition there, and Tesla's brand has been tainted enough where they're just not, and the economy of China was in like a recession. Apparently, it seems, we don't know for sure, but they're sort of climbing out of that. It seems like now that the COVID lockdowns were all ended a few months back. um so I think my guess is that this refresh Model 3 is being banked on to drum up demand in China again. And I would think that the refresh Model 3 comes from China, the China design
Yeah.
studio. And it's going to be, it'll be less expensive and cooler. And I think there's a lot of people maybe in China, savvy buyers. We should check with Leon, the guy we interviewed, about what he's hearing on the ground there. But there's a lot of savvy buyers in China that are will wait for the latest version of something. So I think we could be
Yeah.
seeing some of that. And obviously, it's shut down in China, the Model 3 line, for a reason, right? It's not just shut down for nothing. Like they're I think there's reasons that they're revamping or refreshing the line, whatever it is, but it's going to be a whole new Model 3, in my opinion, that's like refreshed. That's what I think. And so I think that'll just bam, demand will just skyrocket pretty quickly once that's announced, if that's announced in China. Now, can it be sustained at what level? I'm not sure. It depends on the pricing and the overall perception of the value proposition versus the competition at that time. And does the brand get hit again in China or not, with weird lawsuits, or not lawsuits, but like brake failure claims, or there's been some odds and end thing, like the Chinese local companies have been trying to taint, Tesla's brand, supposedly. So,
Right.
um, we'll see. So, yeah, I mean, tomorrow I think we'll answer a lot of that question that you brought up. So, I think the big risks for Tesla, the sort of the not existential, but the biggest risks. We talk about the two biggest global macro risks, or the two biggest Tesla risks I see for Tesla is number one in China. Being caught, not just the China market overall, but more particularly the geopolitical crossfire risk that Elon and Tesla can get into there, especially if China partners with Ukraine. I mean, partners with Russia on this Ukraine-Russia conflict, and the U.S. is like having propaganda wars with China, and Twitter's caught in the middle of it with Elon at the helm of Twitter, and then Tesla's in the crossfire of that. That's a big risk I see if it gets escalated. China just like does something nasty with Elon and Tesla, like shuts them down or something. I think there was this morning a report in a CCP paper, the Global Times. I don't know if you saw this, but they reported, this is like a mouthpiece for the Chinese CCP, that giving Musk a big warning, like not to retweet anything about the um, the COVID lab leak theory in Wuhan, the Wuhan lab leak theory. And I think Elon like retweeted or commented on something like that on Twitter recently. So it was like a big warning to him, like, you better watch out, like, don't bite the hand that feeds you. There was some like saying in it, like, so that's not to be taken lightly. I mean, did you see
No.
that? You didn't see
No,
that?
I didn't see that, but
I'll
I
retweet.
yeah,
There's a
it
Squawk
it makes
Box
sense.
interview about it.
Definitely makes
Yeah.
sense. Like, but it's so this is where I struggle to see, how Elon navigates something like that. He's been, I think, very deft at his handling of the kind of Chinese political situation so far, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like, he very clearly has issues with the way that the COVID lockdowns were handled and the whole COVID pandemic and Fauci. And regardless of your own views on this is something that he very obviously has strong opinions on. And he tends to not back down from fights like this. But when he's
Yeah.
getting a stern warning like that from the CCP, I don't know. I
Yeah.
could see Elon even backing down, from that. But
I just
I could
retweeted
also,
that news report if anyone wants to watch it. So it's definitely a
I
signal to look at.
yeah, I could also just see him saying, you know what, like, screw it. You're like, nobody's going to control me. I've got enough
Yeah.
wealth. I can do whatever I want. And
Yeah. Tesla will
continuing to just pick this fight,
retweet whatever he wants.
and
Yeah.
that could be bad news for Tesla. So, and I don't
Yeah.
know how I feel about that. Like, as a freedom loving American, I kind of like somebody willing to get punched in the face for speaking truth to power. But as a Tesla shareholder, that is not a battle that I really want him fighting. So I'm a
No.
little torn
Yeah.
on it personally.
I'm torn on it too. Just like his purchase of Twitter, I was torn on. It hurt. It definitely, him selling Tesla stock and the PR around it hurt Tesla's share
Yeah.
price in the short and medium term at the time. Um, but yeah, I mean, you knew it was the right thing for the future of society. So similar, yeah. At some point, there's going to be some falling out. I think. I think it's almost inevitable. I don't think Elon chooses this time to let it happen, but at some point he's going to stand up for himself and freedom of speech, I think, and not heed to the Chinese CCP's warnings on what to say or what not to say. I think he'll still allow, like he says, like the government laws in China to exist, and like in China,
Yeah.
Twitter doesn't have to exist, right? That's fine.
Yep.
He's fine with
Yep.
that. But outside of China, he should, in the U.S., freedom of speech is critical, and so I think at some point he'll stand up to that principle. I kind of hope it's not yet, though. I don't want it to be
Yeah.
today or tomorrow with this latest report.
Yeah,
So I
let's
just
let
reached.
robo taxis be solved first, and
Yeah,
then we can.
yeah. The other big risk for Tesla stock, so that's one big risk for Tesla stock is the China situation, not just the economy, but the geopolitical stuff going on there, and the crossfire of that. And the other big risk, which you mentioned yesterday, which I also agree is a risk, is the NHTSA recalls are just like a early symptom potentially of it. I mean, they're just over the air update requirements by NHTSA, but it's called recall, but what are your thoughts on this as a big risk to Tesla, Matt? I mean,
Yeah,
you've been thinking about it more.
I think it's a bigger risk than most bulls are, giving it credit for. That this is probably the most substantive of the recalls that we've seen so far because it's actually delaying their rollout of FSD beta to paying customers. And
Hmm.
so far, we've seen Tesla just kind of laugh at these, recalls, be like, "Oh, we already solved it," but we've got to issue this, paper letter to our customers anyways. And it's always been a quick fix, but like I've experienced the speeding through a yellow and a couple of like the slowing at a stop sign. These might not be as quick fixes as some people might think. And so I think it at least does have that impact of like I would imagine very small impact, but a real one in the short term would be, well, they can't recognize any FSD revenue on new sales. So that might
Hmm.
hurt. I mean, if you think of like a full quarter of FSD sales, that's a couple $100 million of revenue that will not be recognized now. If
Yeah.
assuming it goes, like 5 months or something like that. Um, and then the other thing that is probably more of a risk in my mind is the fact that this investigation is still ongoing, and NHTSA has used some language that like they're devoting a lot of resources to this investigation, and they're using novel legal techniques, and I
That word
that
novel
just
legal, that was a little scary.
yeah, that doesn't inspire confidence in me that this is a nothing burger. I've seen a lot of people when I brought this up in the past say, "Well, ultimately the data will win out," and blah blah blah. And like, I think that's probably true. Like, I think it's definitely less than a 50% chance that like something serious comes where NHTSA has like a let's say like a forced recall of FSD beta, and like you and I can't use it anymore until Tesla figures it out. And then if Tesla can't have it in the real world anymore, then progress slows on it, right? So like that's
Yeah.
like that type of scenario would be awful. I think it's low risk, or I think it's low likelihood, but very high impact if something like that were to happen. So I think it's at
Yeah.
least just worth keeping on the radar that something like
Keep
that
on the radar.
could be possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think NHTSA can make life more difficult for Tesla, but I don't think it can easily stop FSD completely. I think they can just like come up with more adjustments they require Tesla to do on the software, and Tesla would just have to keep updating its software based on what NHTSA is telling, which would be so annoying for Tesla. But I think the main, like 80% of the use or functionality or benefit of FSD would still be usable. All the highway driving and basic. So I think it would be hard for NHTSA in its power to like totally stop all of FSD software because it's really just like it's just driver assistance, advanced driver assistance. Every car has that. Like all the new cars have that already. Tesla's is just a little novel and unique in that it gets updated over the air and it's more advanced and such. So it would be very tough for NHTSA just to outlaw all advanced driver assistance. Maybe they could somehow create a lawsuit to force Tesla to rename it something else or something. I don't know, but I don't see NHTSA being able to stop it in its tracks. I think that would require like congressional legislation or something like that. But I think certain states could try to outlaw it somehow in those states, maybe, or some states will be more friendly. So it'll just, I think NHTSA is it could continue to make life more difficult for Tesla with all the quote unquote recalls it might continue to issue over time. But that's my thought. But I think that's a risk too. I do think it's a risk because it could just get so ugly with PR and press, and especially when the first full self-driving beta accident happened that kills someone, it's caught on camera and like clearly evident, that'll just become national news headlines immediately, and who knows where that
Yeah.
goes with people like Dan O'Dowd like promoting that nasty accident to be reasons for outlawing it or something,
Jeez.
and then Congress votes on it or something. Who knows? That's what I worry about, is that kind of escalation of mass hysteria on not looking at statistics and safety statistics, but just looking at one anecdotal incident or something.